on this occasion is net zero energy and transport. And remind members wishing to ask a supplementary question to press the request to speak buttons during the relevant question. And I call question number 1, Alexander Stewart.
To ask the Scottish Government what additional support it will provide to local authorities in relation to holding public inquiries into onshore wind farms, and I refer members to my register of interest.
Apologies, Mr Burnett, and I call Minister Alistair Allen.
Improving planning skills and capacity is a key commitment and priority for the Scottish Government. Together with the Improvement Service, we offer training to planning authorities on appeals processes, including public local inquiries. We have also been working closely with the UK Government on their review of Scottish consenting, which included a recent public consultation on potential reforms to the UK Electricity Act 1989. These reforms are intended to mandate early engagement with statutory consultees to increase application quality and reduce the need for public local inquiries.
Alexander Burnett.
Now, the Hill of Fair wind farm proposal has unanimously been opposed by Aberdeenshire Council and the wider community. Now, over the 50-year lifespan of a project, the developer RES will generate around £1.2 billion of income at today's prices. The landowner, Dunect Estates, will be paid over £140 million in rent, whilst the community benefit will only amount to £26 million. If Dunect Estates do not withdraw the application by the 21st of January, there will need to be a public inquiry at further cost to Aberdeenshire Council, despite whistleblowers in SSEN telling me that this is already a done deal as they prepare connections. So does the Minister think those profiting so obscenely from the destruction of a community should bear the cost of a public inquiry, particularly at a time when councils are so stretched for cash?
Minister.
Well, the member is well aware I simply cannot comment on a live application of the kind that he mentions. I do reiterate what I said, however, about the fact that in looking into the future, the Scottish Government is happy to work with the UK Government on finding solutions and finding reform around the planning system for the future. But as I say, the member knows full well I cannot comment on a live application.
Supplementary, Bill Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Reaching our net zero goal should be done in collaboration with local communities. They must see the benefits of the Scottish Government's efforts to kick-start Scotland's green re-industrialisation. So can the Minister say any more about the twin aims of ensuring a fair process whilst decarbonising the country?
Minister.
Well, there are twin aims, and it is vital that people and communities share the wealth of Scotland's abundant renewable energy resources and net zero transition. And through our good practice principles for onshore developments, the Scottish Government continues to encourage developers to offer community benefits as standard on all renewable energy projects. Community benefits are a well-established and integral part of renewable energy projects in Scotland, with over £30 million of community benefits offered to Scottish communities in the last 12 months.
Question 2, Ash Regan.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it has a policy of presumption against new oil and gas licences.
Minister.
As a member will be aware, decisions on offshore oil and gas licensing and consenting are reserved to the UK Government. The Scottish Government's draft energy strategy and just transition plan included a proposal for consultation of support for a presumption against licensing for exploration to identify entirely new fields. We have never proposed a policy of no new licensing at all. For those fields that are already identified but not yet in production, we consulted on support for these continuing to progress through the licensing and consenting process, subject to a robust climate compatibility checkpoint. The judgments and issues within the strategy are informed and influenced by recent developments in the UK Government energy policy and court decisions. This is a rapidly changing landscape, and we are taking time to reflect on these developments and the strategy before drawing any conclusions and publishing any final strategy.
Ash Regan.
I don't think anyone will be the wiser as to where the Scottish Government stands on this after that answer from the Minister. The energy sector, as the Chamber will know, has fiercely criticised the Government's uncertain tone when its energy strategy and just transition plan were unveiled last year. This tone has knocked confidence and discouraged industry investment. Workers in the sector urgently need confidence that the energy transition will protect livelihoods of their communities, across Scotland and a lack of clarity on new oil and gas licences or the future of Scotland's refinery capacity at Grangemouth does not build confidence. Can the government now step up with a plan that meets Scotland's energy security from our own natural resources
Minister.
and provide a realistic plan to restore industry confidence that secures sector skills?
I don't think anyone could be in any doubt realistically about the commitment that the Scottish Government has not only to finding a just transition but to supporting those jobs existing in the sector she mentions just now. The member also mentions Grangemouth, and I would recall to her or remind to her the exchange that she had with the First Minister on this subject, in which the First Minister reacted to the comments she made about the situation at Grangemouth, and in which he said that I'm actively pursuing an option to maintain the refining capacity at Grangemouth, and if that needs to be stated again, I will state it again to Parliament.
Brief supplementary. Douglas Lumsden.
Presiding Officer, since 2021, the words and actions of this government have demonised the oil and gas industry, condemned steps to secure our energy security at Rosebank and Campbell. So can the Minister say that the poisoned rhetoric of Nicola Sturgeon, Humza Yousaf and Patrick Harvey have been consigned to history? And will his government act now to secure the livelihoods of 100,000 jobs and remove the presumption against oil and gas?
Minister.
I would suggest that the language and rhetoric which has been overstated is that which we've just heard in that question, and I would again state that the judgment and issues within the strategy will be informed and influenced by recent developments in the UK government energy policy and by court decisions, and I think any responsible government would be expected to do that.
Brief supplementary. Sarah Boyack.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the Minister acknowledge that the Government's energy strategy was promised years ago and that we urgently need to see confidence for new investment right across Scotland in supply chains, and the just transition workers urgently need? Never mind more delays with the strategy and never mind more delays in planning decisions on renewables. So when will the Government's energy strategy and just transition plan be published?
Not directly related to the original question, but Minister, if there's anything you can add by way of response, that would be helpful. I'm
not sure I can add much more, Presiding Officer, other than to say that the Government will reflect on these issues before drawing any conclusions and publishing any final strategy.
Question 3, Craig Hoy.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Net Zero Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues on how to ensure the delivery of the workforce required to deliver its net zero targets, including through discussions with Skills Development Scotland and colleges.
Minister.
I regularly engage with my Education and Skills ministerial colleagues to discuss the importance of the net zero workforce, and Scotland is already leading the way in the creation of green jobs, with new PwC data showing that the Scottish green jobs market has tripled since 2021. PwC have been clear that Scotland's strong skills base is a critical factor in attracting green investment and the creation of green jobs. Institutions like colleges have a critical role to play in developing the multi-skilled workforce that will drive the just transition to net zero. Last week I visited the NESCOL campus, or I should say that my colleague, the Cabinet Secretary, visited the NESCOL campus in Fraserburgh to discuss their curriculum and to launch their Ocean Winds pre-apprenticeship scheme, an initiative supporting students preparing to work in the offshore wind industry.
Craig Hoy.
I thank the Minister for that answer. Due to the uncertainty of which heating technologies will prevail in the decarbonisation process, colleges, employers and the private sector see there is a reluctance to invest in large-scale training for young people in new skills such as installing and maintaining heat pumps. Has the Government explored the possibility of redirecting ScotWind monies towards decarbonising the public estate rather than committing it to the crowded renewables investment market? Because this would surely create the surety of demand to pump prime these skills and college places for those who would be needed in a large-scale rollout of renewable heating in Scotland.
Minister.
I will attempt to react to some of that and not to the pun about pump priming, but I would say that I have visited a number of colleges recently where it has been very clear that there is a commitment in the further education system to introducing young people to all manner of technologies, and the member rightly mentions the importance of having a broad spectrum of those available, including technologies around older types of heating systems, as well as heat pumps, and also perhaps for the future other means of heating, electric heating for existing radiator systems in houses.
Supplementary, Michael Matheson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. The Minister will be aware that one of the key risks that we face in achieving our net zero targets is access to the right skills to support the rollout of the renewable technologies which will require to decarbonise our energy system, whether that be offshore or onshore wind, or whether it be marine and tidal, or whether it may be the new age of hydro pump storage, which is coming as a result of the planned introduction of a cap and floor for pump storage next year. Given the critical nature of the skills to help to achieve net zero, can I ask the Minister, is there more that we could do to ensure that the needs of industry and colleges are effectively aligned to ensure that we are generating the workforce that will be necessary to deliver these technologies in the years ahead?
Minister.
The member raises very important points, and we are working to ensure that that workforce is there for future. And the Green Jobs Barometer, for instance, has been clear that Scotland's skills base is providing a clear advantage to Scotland in capitalising on those green jobs and indeed those green skills, and identifying where existing skills in other sectors are very applicable to people who wish to transfer into a new career.
Okay, question 4, Tim Eagle.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government how many planning consents for onshore wind farm developments in the Highlands and Islands region the Scottish ministers have approved following an appeal since 2021.
Minister.
Since 1 January 2021, a total of 9 planning appeals for onshore wind farm developments in the Highlands and Islands region have been allowed.
Tim Eagle.
Glen on the Mull of Kintyre was recently approved by ministers despite huge opposition and concern from local people. One of those campaigners told me that the whole focus is on policy and net zero. It is completely lacking in humanity. The SNP talk about empowerment, but it is obviously just theirs. Many campaigners are not against harnessing wind, but the sheer volume of applications, especially in the Highlands and Islands, is changing rural communities. Does the Minister agree with me that the views of local people are being ignored, and what can he do to improve this situation?
Minister.
Well, I obviously don't accept the premise of the question that views of people are ignored in this process that we have just now. But the Government, as I've mentioned, is continually seeking to improve the process, which is why we are working with the UK Government to include things like pre-consultation for major applications, to make sure that at the earliest possible stage those views are taken into account.
Supplementary, Colin Beattie.
Can the Minister outline the increase in Scotland's renewable energy generation capacity as a result of developments such as onshore and offshore wind and solar?
Minister.
As of June 2024, there was 15.6 gigawatts of renewable electricity capacity in Scotland. In the last 12 months, renewable electricity capacity has risen, up 5% since June 2023. This is largely due to increases in onshore and offshore wind capacity.
Question 5, Stephen Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what recent assessment it has made of the effectiveness of its funding of active travel.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
All active travel programmes are assessed against criteria set out in the Active Travel Framework, which establishes high-level outcomes and key indicators to monitor and evaluate progress. Data and analysis that informs progress against these outcomes are measured and published annually. In addition, the National Performance Framework includes journeys by active travel as a national indicator and is routinely monitored and assessed. In addition, relevant partners publish assessments of their programmes on an annual basis. These include the National Cycle Network and Places for Everyone programmes delivered by Sustrans and the Ian Finlay Path Fund programme delivered by Paths for All.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, it's Sustrans that I would like to refer to in my next question, because they report in 2024 that they received £97.9 million from the Scottish Government, and in the same period gave out £81 million in grants to Scotland. Now, Sustrans takes money that should be sent directly to local authorities. and it top slices £17 million of it to pay for their organisation's overhead. They're based in Bristol, and they have no less than 13 directors on their board. So can the Cabinet Secretary tell me why we shouldn't give that money directly to Scotland's local authorities and leave Sustrans to market itself to them as any other consultancy does? Wouldn't the taxpayer get better value and more accountability?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I would question the member's figures. I can tell him that we've allocated over £66 million of funding to Sustrans this financial year, and that is funding that supports local authorities and others in Scotland to deliver the infrastructure that is required, including the expansion of the National Cycle Network, which I'm sure Mr Kerr would want to support. This is managed by their Scottish-based staff. Now, to bring him up to date, as part of the transformation of active travel delivery, the funding of the main Transport Scotland infrastructure programme, Places for Everyone, managed by Sustrans, will wind down by December 2025. Any remaining projects will, subject to assessment, shift to the new Active Travel Infrastructure Fund, which will see Transport Scotland directly award funding to local authorities, regional transport partnerships and national park authorities, and I'm sure he would welcome that answer.
Thank you. A couple of brief supplementaries. First, Claire Baker.
Thank you. Can the Cabinet Secretary confirm the extent of the cut to the actual travel budget and the 25-26 proposals? Spokes are estimating the cut not to be £20 million, but to be in excess of £40 million.
Cabinet Secretary.
Again, we will lay out the detail of our active and sustainable travel funding as the draft budget progresses through Parliament. What I would say is that the member will be aware of the emergency measures that took place over the last year, a real challenge we had, particularly following the incoming UK Government's July statement. We allocated, in the end, £155 million for active travel. The budget this year, which does include funding, and I might add, also for bus infrastructure funds, so I think the recent assertions by the member are also incorrect in relation to bus, but that total is now as set out in the budget as £188 million, which you will understand is an increase over last year's spend.
And briefly, Mark Ruskell.
The National Cycle Network, built and managed by Sustrans Scotland, has been hugely successful, generating 60 million trips every single year. It doesn't just connect places together, it connects people to schools, shops, within communities as well. So can the Cabinet Secretary confirm whether the funding for the National Cycle Network specifically is going up next year to enable Sustrans to deliver the projects to start to close some of the missing links that we see at the moment, such as Comrie to Crieff and Dunkeld?
Cabinet Secretary.
So our funding for the National Cycle Network will continue positively. I'm not going to give the detail at this stage as we work through the detail of the overall active and sustainable transport plan. But I can say that we are very supportive of the National Cycle Network. I myself saw the very good development works at Carnoustie on the National Cycle Network just last week, and it is a plan, a project and development that we continue to support.
Thank you. Before calling question 6, can I just ask members on the Conservative benches to treat with respect those who are asking the question, as I'm sure they will do with question number 6, which is Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it plans to enhance regional transport partnerships over the coming year.
Secretary.
Transport Scotland supports regional transport partnerships and local authorities in their role to strengthen the planning and delivery of regional developments. This year we're providing funding to RTPs to help them develop targeted interventions locally, which help encourage and enable people to walk, wheel, cycle more in their neighbourhoods. They also play a central role in delivering the programme as funding recipients, allowing them to allocate funds to local projects. And Transport Scotland continues to engage with RTPs, which are all quite different in their requirements, on opportunities to increase accessibility, availability and affordability of public transport.
Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you, Deputy President. As my learned friend Stephen Kerr just pointed out, Sustrans received £97.9 million from the Scottish Government in figures revealed to us. This is at a time when Edinburgh City Council cannot deal with the potholes in our city. Does she not believe the money would be more effective to give it to Edinburgh City Council to fix the potholes rather than wasting money on an unelected body?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I explain, Presiding Officer, the original question was about the regional transport partnerships, not specifically Edinburgh City Council, and clearly it's the councils, there's council responsibility with funding clearly from the Scottish Government who make the decisions about what they fund locally. So in terms of our funding for transport has gone up for the first time ever. It will be over £4 billion. Over £1 billion of that will be in our trunk road developments. And in terms of our funding and support, we will ensure that the regional transport partnerships, which you'll be aware consist of a board of a number of different councils to take regional approaches to regional transport partnerships, will also continue to be supported.
Question 7, Colin Smith.
Thank you, President Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the request from the A77 Action Group for the establishment of a task force to consider issues relating to the impact of the reported increased use of full road closures on the A77.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government is committed to ongoing engagement with interested parties on strategic transport matters affecting the A77. Transport Scotland have developed a long-standing relationship with the A77 campaign and meet on a regular basis, the last occasion being the 5th of December. I had productive discussions with the group last month and heard directly about the impacts that closures have on road users and local communities. I have agreed to bring together interested stakeholders with the A77 group in a round table to collectively scope and work through the variety of different issues which are identified and recommended, and that this would be a better way to achieve progress.
Colin Smith.
The Cabinet Secretary will know from her meeting with the A77 Action Group that the neglect of that trunk road has reduced it in parts to one lane for 3,000 out of 3,652 days since 2014 because of that lack of investment. There's an increase in number of evening road closures which send road users on detours of hours and hundreds of miles, yet there's still no plans for any improvements to that road. It is some weeks since the Cabinet Secretary met with the group, so when will these roundtable discussions take place, and will she ensure it becomes a permanent task force so these issues can be discussed on a regular basis?
Cabinet Secretary.
So we're making arrangements, as I met with them last month, as to when we will have that round table. I think that will allow us to scope up what the issues are. There are a number of issues, I think, particularly the Carlock Wall concerns, which has been, I think, a great player in terms of the number of days on that closure. It's been closed since 2020. I understand there's a programme completion date of mid-December 2024, so that's fast approaching, and they're working towards delivering that, and that time we'll be able to see the temporary traffic lights move there. That's a challenge geotechnically, topographically, as everybody who knows the area will know. But obviously there are other road closures, there's diversions, there's a whole multi-layered different area of attack that we need to work through. And so therefore I think that's best scoped out in that meeting with them. And I'm encouraging all the partners to come to the table to systematically try and address the different issues.
A couple of brief supplementaries. First, Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is welcome to hear the update and that the Cabinet Secretary is working really well with the A77 Action Group. Could you clarify that overnight closures of the roads, while extremely frustrating, are necessary to ensure the maintenance of the critical infrastructure routes like the A77? And could you highlight what the A77 has been improved in recent years as a result of action taken by the SNP?
Cabinet Secretary.
The majority of works on the A77 trunk road can be carried out safely without the need for a full closure, but when they do have to close the road, there has to be engagement with local communities and travelling public. I would add that even in the last financial year, £9.4 million has been spent on improving the road. That's on top of the, or part of, sorry, that's in there's £134 million we've invested since 2007, and of course there's the £29 million Maybole bypass. So there is an investment in the road, but is problematic in terms of landslips in particular and real challenges, and that's why we need to systematically work through the improvements that can be made.
Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I think myself and members from across this chamber have spoken about the need for urgent investment in the A77 since all the time I've been in here. And STBR2, we've waited for with bated breath for actual action to happen. But she did mention the Maybole bypass. There was £30 million investment in that. And can I say, if you ever wanted evidence, Cabinet Secretary, Maybole have now managed to leverage £100 million worth of investment because of the bypass. Isn't that enough evidence to say that an awful lot more work down that A77 would really improve the lives of people all the way down to Stranraer?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm glad for the member's support for the SNP government's delivery of the Mail bypass. I know, because I am from Ayrshire. I know how important it is, and I know in terms of businesses and the benefits that that can bring. That was planned for, that was delivered, but there is a continuing investment in that road. We hear complaints about closures because of the investment in that road, so you can't have it both ways. You can't complain there's no investment and then complain when there's works that are required for maintenance and there are works that are required for issues that happen, for example, like landslips. There is, as I said, we've invested over £134 million in that road. That is investment. Can more be done? Yes. Are we systematically going to work through the issues on the A77? Yes. And I look forward to meeting with that A77 group again.
Thank you. Always through the Chair. And question number 8, Gordon MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it supports the bus industry to transfer to zero-emission technologies.
Secretary.
The Scottish Government has provided more than £150 million since 2020 to decarbonise the bus sector. More than 800 zero-emission buses and coaches and their charging infrastructure have been supported. This includes £41 million in the most recent round of the Scottish Zero-Emission Bus Challenge Fund, which draws in more than 3 times as much in private sector investment. The project supports more than 250 new zero-emission vehicles and the installation of 200 chargers across 20 depots. It will establish the backbone of a pan-Scotland charging network available to other large road vehicles. And since 2018, our bus emissions abatement retrofit scheme has also awarded £24 million to retrofit over 1,200 buses and coaches to support the bus industry in adapting to low-emission zones.
Gordon MacDonald.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. With electrification of the bus industry, how will this funding help create a whole Scotland network for buses, coaches and HGVs?
Cabinet Secretary.
So our significant investment into the charging infrastructure through ScotZEB2, as I set out in my original answer, is providing electrified depots which can be used by other businesses across the length of the country where it's possible to do so. So opening these depots to other road users, such as heavy goods vehicles, can create beneficial new revenue streams for their owners and at the same time provide confidence to other fleets that charging can be made available to support those operations transition to zero-emission alternatives. So I hope to see even more shared charging infrastructure open into the future.
A brief supplementary, Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm sure that the Cabinet Secretary will agree that Alexander Dennis of Falkirk is one of the jewels in the crown of Scottish manufacturing, but they have cited increasingly unfair competition and subsidy from overseas manufacturers such as in China as responsible for the recent difficult decision to consult on 160 redundancies at their site in Falkirk. They've cited that of the 252 buses expected to be delivered through the Scottish Government's Zero Emission Bus Challenge, that 80% will be likely manufactured outside of the United Kingdom. Will the Cabinet Secretary therefore agree to engage with Falkirk's MP Ewan Steinbach and the Secretary of State for Trade and Industry to resolve the unfair procurement practices and ensure more buses are built in Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
So we've supported Alexander Dennis. I'm clearly disappointed to hear of the redundancies. The Scottish Government has supported Alexander Dennis as a company, and we've supported them in terms of the provision of support through our zero-emission funding. Alexander Dennis have secured orders for more vehicles than any other manufacturer through our Scottish ultra-low emission bus scheme, and ScotZEB indeed orders for more than 360 buses. You may be aware that the type of vehicles that are being required may not be manufactured by Alexander Dennis currently, but therefore that's why the support for the company is really important and how they develop for future markets. His point about the UK Government is really important because there are question marks about the new incoming UK Government's provision and support for zero-emission buses and the potential orders that Alexander Dennis could get from the UK Government's supporting scheme. He makes the point about subsidy and subsidy control, and that is an issue that we regularly engage with the UK Government on.
Thank you. And with apologies to those I wasn't able to call, that concludes portfolio questions on net zero energy and transport. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.